Thomas Massie and Roy Connick just set off a bomb on CNN. Basically, what you're going to hear Thomas Massie say is, Trump, you're going to turn over the files. If you don't, that will be a violation of the law, and we will send you to jail. In other words, we are going to impeach. Let me be clear. Impeaching Donald Trump. And there has already been demonstrated that a majority of the House and more than 60 votes exist in the Senate to remove anyone. In other words, Donald Trump is impeachable, and discharge petitions now can basically run the House and replace that of Speaker Mike Johnson. Hear this.
If the administration doesn't release what it has, what will you do as the two who led this charge and were the originals that are the reason we're here tonight?
Well, as Rose said, there are criminal penalties if they don't follow the law. And that's the recourse that we would follow. We undertook a very steep hill, a steep climb to get this done. There have been subpoenas, there have been resolutions, there's been an oversight committee. Those are all sort of Mother May I requests to the administration. We decided to do this as a law, which means it has to pass both chambers and even be signed by the man who was opposed to it. At least be presented to him. He could have always vetoed it. And because we're going to overcome all three of those hurdles, our recourse is legal now. These people could eventually go to jail for not releasing these files.
I'm a huge fan of Jessica Denson, particularly on her effort to try to get Trump removed on all the different issues as to why it is that Trump should never have been allowed to be president, not just the 14th Amendment, Section 3, but I've listed a whole bunch of others, everything from the fact that Trump is a convicted felon, which means he is already in violation of the impeachment clause, and the Department of Justice has a legal opinion in which they believe that a convicted felon would never be able to serve public office in D.C. because they already are in violation of the impeachment clause. You also have other bigger issues, like all the conflicts of interest that come from all of the indictments that Trump has, and even his convictions, like his corporation violating, everything from, it was convicted for tax fraud, insurance fraud, and bank fraud, which means that people who are like that, they don't even get to be bank tellers. That means he should not even be in contact with the Federal Reserve, because his company was convicted of tax fraud, insurance fraud, and bank fraud. He shouldn't even be in contact with the IRS, because the violations that occurred in New York were violations of state taxes, not just federal taxes, and that means the IRS is still waiting to say how much Donald Trump's tax frauds and insurance frauds and bank fraud of his company inside of New York includes the IRS itself. Trump should not have even been allowed to travel around the world as a convicted felon, because convicted felons don't have the ability to travel. I mean, it's on and on and on and on. But Roy Connick, who was sitting there, talked about on Jessica Denson's show about impeachment. In fact, he put forward impeachment resolutions. This is the problem that Trump fundamentally has. The speaker is not his protector anymore, because the speaker cannot overcome a discharge petition, and discharge petitions get nearly unanimous votes in both houses outside of one Republican in the House. That is doom. That is like the speaker could be fired tomorrow, right now in the House. But not only could he just be voted in and fired, but it's even worse than that. And that is that Trump is staring at a vote, and every single person serving in his administration realizes one thing. The vote has just been demonstrated. A discharge petition can go forward, and there's enough votes in both houses of Congress to remove them. That's huge. The potential of that happening is real, even against the wishes of Donald Trump and against the wishes of the Speaker. That basically means that this speaker is no longer a speaker. What is the speaker right now in the House of Representatives is anyone with a discharge petition that makes up that group of Republicans, that small little sliver of Republicans that is required for discharge petitions to pass. That is what we just witnessed. We just witnessed how Trump can be impeached and removed from office, plus any and all members of his entire administration. Like, share, and subscribe. This is awesome. We actually have Republicans who are saying very clearly, release the documentation, and if not, we're going to put you in jail or impeach you. Wow. Like, share, and subscribe.